On this episode of Power Grid Talks, we find ourselves in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and we're sitting down with Mr. Colby Wells. We caught up with Colby at the Statewide Cooperative Directors Conference here, and it's a little different out here in rural America. You see, the electric grid, when you get into these rural areas, has always been about more than poles, wire, and keeping the lights on. It's about the communities and the people those lines serve every day. Colby understands that from a perspective you don't always find in the CEO's office, because his career started out on the line. He worked his way from the field into leadership, carrying with him the work ethic, perspective, and understanding that comes from actually doing the work. Today, Colby is the CEO of South Central Arkansas Electric Cooperative and South Central Connect. On this episode, we dive into his journey from lineman to CEO. We talk about the cooperative model, leadership, broadband, and the challenges facing these rural utilities, as well as what the future of the industry looks like from someone who's experienced it from both sides. This is Power Grid Talks from the bucket trucks to the boardrooms with Mr. Colby Wells. You're listening to Power Grid Talks from the bucket trucks to the boardrooms. I'm your host, Tom Williamson, a journeyman lineman with over 15 years in the trade. Here we bring you real stories and real conversations from the field to the executive suites of the electric utility world. It's about the people who keep the power flowing and the grid strong. Let's get to work. We're out here today talking to Colby Wells. How we doing, man?
Doing good, Tom. Yeah. How are you, bud?
I'm doing good. I appreciate you inviting me out here to Arkansas. This born and raised for you? Been here forever?
Been here forever.
Man, that's crazy.
Born and raised right in Arkadelphia.
All right, so tell everybody about kind of your role and what you're doing right now.
Okay. So currently I'm serving as the CEO for South Central Arkansas Electric Cooperative and South Central Connect, our broadband subsidiary. Been in the role since May of 2020, so just over the 6-year mark.
Okay. Awesome. So we've talked a little bit before this, and I kind of feel like you got a pretty awesome story that I can relate to, right? So we're going to talk about kind of how you got to that point and where everything kind of started for you. So you almost just didn't take this job, right?
That's right.
So let's talk about that part for a little bit.
That's right. Yeah. So it was early 2000s, and I joined the workforce, I guess if you will, at age 14. Went to work for a landscaping company, and just always had desire to work with my hands. I mean, grew up on a small little farm and like just saw dad working all the time and grandpa and all that, and just knew good hard work was how to make a living, right? And so I bounced all over the place from age 14 to 19, anything from waiting tables to landscaping to working on a horse farm, all these different things, and finally landed in the electric field for a smaller electrician, mainly doing residential work.
Okay. And
really felt at home there. Just loved the fact of we were building a lot of houses. This is 2003-ish time frame, and so everything's booming. We're building a lot of houses. Get to see the joy out of people moving into new houses. I'm like, I really like electrical work. It's pretty clean.
Yep.
For the most part. I mean, we did some CNI stuff. You get into some of the dirty stuff, but just really was liking it. And the opportunity come up they were hiring several apprentices. I think they had 3 or 4 job postings or whatever at the co-op. And I heard through word of mouth, small town, and it's the co-op. So I started getting pressure from a few folks to apply for the job. And I'm like, okay, well, I probably need to apply at least, And so I apply and get called back for a second interview. And I had gotten word that the second interview really wasn't an interview. It was more of like signing offer letters and all that type stuff for the guys that they were bringing back. And I was riding with a gentleman in the trades. It was actually after, I was working after hours some with the HVAC company outside the electrical work. And I was riding down the road with a gentleman that was also a dad to one of my very best friends in high school. And I told him, I said, hey, I'm gonna turn the job down. And he wasn't a man to cuss he was just calm, cool, and collected all the time. And Tom, we were driving about 60 miles an hour down the highway. He turned sideways in the seat of this old van and is looking me dead straight in the eyes. And we're still driving. We haven't stopped yet. And begins basically telling me how stupid I am,
right?
Of not taking the job. And his whole point was, I've worked just like you're doing today. I've worked my life of, different jobs and doing all these things and owning my own company. And, I'll have to work till the day I'm dead or can't anymore because there's just not good opportunity for the other benefits and things, right? And it resonated with me just enough, and plus I was scared enough of him that if I didn't take the job, he'd probably beat me up. So I accepted the position, thankfully, and jumping ahead, I know we're going to get deeper into some of this, but I don't think I was a week into the job and realized like, oh, this was a great decision.
This is where it's
like,
at.
This is where it's at, you know.
So he watched you, knew you your entire life, basically, right?
Yes.
So he watched you working 2 jobs at a time.
Yes, sir.
Struggling from one career to another, not really finding your path. And he saw it before you saw it.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of value in that conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been in his house, you know, like I said, his son and I were the same age, and so he you know, he was definitely dialed in that, hey, you got a real opportunity here to change the direction you're on.
So you go to the co-op world and start as Groundman, Apprentice. Okay.
At the time, we didn't have like a entry level Groundman position necessarily. You started out as a first year apprentice, but it really was just a grunt. All right. There was
you didn't know anything.
No, you didn't know anything. Luckily, with the Arkansas Electric Cooperatives, there's 17 in the state, and then there's the kind of the statewide organization that the 17 own and govern and help manage and everything. And that's where our apprenticeship program still lies today. It's gotten a whole lot different and arguably better than it was then, just because. But you had programs that like week long that you went up to Little Rock and did pole climbing and knot tying and like basic first aid, like all these different things.
With other guys from other parts.
That's right, from all the other co-ops. Sometimes there would be some municipality guys that would come in. We got a few municipalities in the state, and so sometimes you're in with those guys. And so that's where your apprenticeship training came from. And then the rest of it's OJT, right? Just on-the-job training and learning the processes and all that type of stuff.
Okay. So as an electrician, you skinned wire, you put stuff together, all that kind of stuff, but you never climb poles or went up on bucket trucks, right?
No.
So how was that transition?
Yeah. So and before we get too far past the beginning, the other little note that, and definitely the gentleman that chewed on me that day had no way to see this, but I would have been journeyman out and taking my master's test, and my dream was to own my own electrical business, like my own contracting business.
So you were on that path.
I mean, it's just something I want to work for myself, kind of thing. And I would have, if testing and hours and all that stuff would have lined up, which I was making sure that was happening.
Sure.
I would have been starting that business in 2008.
Okay.
So, I mean, 2008's been a while ago, and some of us have forgotten about the housing market crash and everything. And it didn't, you know, Arkansas wasn't nearly as hit as hard as some of the other bigger, more populated states, but it still would have been a real dogfight, you know, trying to start a brand new business at that time. And, you know, so it's just, it's kind of ironic to look back, and I think we'll get into some of that later on. But you get into the co-op world and you start going through this training and everything. Well, one of my big deals, I was terrified of heights. And it had already impacted me several times just doing electrical work, right? You climbing up in tall ceilings and things like that.
Ladders,
and to put it in perspective of how terrified of heights I actually was, when I would go to, say, a mall or something like that, it's multi-story, and a lot of times they got a balcony, you know, that you can kind of see down into the inside. I would walk against the wall away from the balcony. Yeah, like I'm not talking about just, oh yeah, he's scared of height. No, I'm talking about terrified of them.
Okay.
And so that was my first real challenge. I mean, the work was the work, you know, all those other things, but that was my real challenge to like really overcome. And you know, even as a young 20-year-old, I realized real quick, A, I love this work. B, you got to get over heights, because I mean, and especially at the local co-op, we don't have a lot of underground, so the underground crews always got made fun of. Anyway,
you didn't want to be that guy.
I didn't want to be that guy, you know. and so it became one of those things that I just focused that fear into more of like, hey, instead of letting the fear rule the life, right, and like making me terrified of this particular thing, how do I channel that into you know, just being the best I can be, right? Just take that fear, all that, because it's an emotion. It's not an actual physical limitation. It's an emotion.
Right. Yep.
And so just turn that emotion into a new emotion of like, hey, I'm going to be the absolute best that I can be at, in this case, climbing, right?
Yep.
And then, which later on in my career got to go into bucket work and being efficient. Don't wear yourself out, worrying to death you're going to fall. wear yourself out with being extremely smooth, thinking about it before you ever put the first hook in the pole.
Yep.
And just easing up the pole in an effort to where you're not just draining your body.
Yep.
And so that was how I channeled the fear of climbing, was just turned it into a different emotion. So.
And I've told I have a lot of young guys reaching out to me, and man, I want to get in line work, but I don't have my CDL. I'm scared of heights, whatever their restriction they think it is, right? And I was kind of the same way as you. I wasn't deathly scared of heights, but I didn't like heights. Mm-hmm. But when you put it in your brain that, hey, I'm going to do this one step at a time, and then the next step, and then you stay in the moment, right. You can overcome any of that, right?
That's absolutely the case.
People don't realize that. Yeah. How did the old timers handle? Did they know you were scared of heights?
Oh no.
So you were able to hide it from them.
Absolutely. I mean, there will hopefully there will be some of the old guys I worked with and still are working with us today that will listen to this podcast, and it may be news to them. Yeah. I mean, because it was awesome. Not. It was. I never showed it. Especially in those days, in the early 2000s, I mean, things were still pretty gruff. If you would have shown that, then you were going to get picked on. No matter how efficient you were at climbing, they were always going to give you a hard time.
You were giving them bait at that point.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
100%. So let's talk about the first old lineman that really shaped who you become. You remember that guy?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Billy. And he, so we hired, the co-op hired 3 apprentices, groundmen, grunts, whatever, at the same time. We all started, we were working 410s at the time, and 2 of us started on Monday, and the third guy started on a Tuesday, because he was on the Tuesday through Friday, and we were on Monday through Thursday. And I was really blessed. All 3 of the crew leaders we had were all great crew leaders, and all have retired now, but they all had their different thing that they did. Yep. And I got blessed to be with Billy. He had been there, oh man, I don't even remember how many years he had been there already when I was hired, 20 plus probably. And so he came up as an apprentice and a groundman back before, I don't even think we had a bucket truck when he came to work there. I mean, everything was climbed. We did have a digger derrick, but it was the hard old days. Mm-hmm. And I think what that taught those old guys is, like, you have to be as efficient as you possibly can be. And you gotta just calm down. Like, there's no need in getting any excitement going on. There's already enough challenges out here as it is. And so just staying calm and cool and collected. And so every morning we get to work, especially on Mondays, we'd probably be starting a new job or something like that. There was a plan in his head that no matter what happened, what kind of outage call we got in the middle of the job or something like that, we had a job to do. And he was always very consistent about it. And he was one of those guys that could go from 0 to 100 over nothing in just a split second also. But he was always consistent about that. Yep. Like, and when I say about nothing, it was something like, why'd you hook a rope up wrong or something like that? Because he just felt like you should know better, even though I didn't know anything. Yeah.
Why'd you rig it like that?
Yeah, that's right. Like, I don't know, and of course early on it was knot tying. Like, boy, you can't untie that knot. You tie some hatchet knot or something instead of actual bowling or a good hitch. And he just had a way of getting in your rear end that I quickly learned and didn't want that to happen, right? But he was like I said, he was consistent with it. It didn't matter if you'd been there 15 years or you'd been there 15 minutes. If you did something stupid, you were getting it. Yep. And I just realized, like, hey, to keep him from getting me, if I don't know, ask. Because if you asked him, he was good. Yep. Like, he never had that moment to, right? So if I didn't know, just go ahead and stop and ask. And then the other big thing with the older guys that I feel like maybe we're losing a little bit, but he was definitely consistent in this part, is showing up every day, every hour, every minute mattered more to him than anything about what was going on. And I was like, hey, that I think will resonate through the rest of my career with anybody. Yep. If I ask questions and I show up, no matter how stupid I was the night before, because I'm in my early 20s, so there was a lot of stupid going on also, right. But just show up every day, every minute, every hour. So, that was something that he really just instilled in me. Obviously, there's a whole lot of other stuff, just being a good old lineman, that you got to learn a lot of good tricks and of the trade and stuff from him. So
I feel like a lot of those old school linemen like that, because I came up the same way, right?
they had their own way of teaching. And yeah, it may not have been HR approved.
Right.
But
Definitely not.
he would blow up on you if you didn't ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
That was his way of getting you to, hey, ask questions before I get in a bind.
That's right.
Because in this industry, if you don't, you may not go home that
That's a
night,
fact.
right?
That's
You
a
can't
fact.
go out there and fake it till you make it. It doesn't work
No,
that way in
it
this
does
industry.
not. It does not.
So did they have the right way of teaching that? Maybe not, right? But at the same time, he also wasn't expecting you to know how to wire up a three-phase bank the first day, but he was expecting you to make sure there was water and ice in the cooler, the
Absolutely.
trash was off the truck at the end of the day
Absolutely.
without being told,
Yep,
right? That kind
absolutely.
of stuff you were capable of.
Yes.
And if you didn't, you knew about it,
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I like that kind of brash mentality a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it can go extreme, don't get me wrong.
Absolutely.
But so what do you think one lesson would be if he was here today with the young lineman that you just hired in, most recent group of linemen? You think what's one thing that he could teach them today that they are missing or don't get?
Yeah, the one thing that we've lost a little bit with our guys, and I mean, I would say this with them sitting at some of my crew leaders today, right, is society has made us a little too soft.
Yeah.
HR rules, safety rules even, have made us, it's a false sense of security sometimes. And I just believe that sometimes guys are like, well, I can't get on that kid as hard as I want to because he's going to turn me into HR.
Yep.
You know, and even though I'm right and I'll get through HR, I'm not even going to get rode up kind of thing. I don't have the time and the want to have to deal with HR or with the CEO calling me and going, hey, I got this kid in my office crying, you know, kind of thing. And not literally crying, but just, you know, griping about something you did today that borderline broke an HR rule or a safety rule or something like that, like not life-threatening, obviously.
What about the line work in general? I mean, do you think it's gotten easier? And I don't mean physically, because physically, obviously, we've gotten tools to make things easier, right? But the mental side of the industry and all of the thinking that goes into it and stuff, is that part easier than it was, or is it harder because of the smart grids and all the technology?
Yeah. So first, for me, I definitely, and I try to keep this real for our senior guys and our younger guys, is what we all have to realize, and it's not just to this industry, it's the world, period, but I'm going to keep it tied to the industry, is especially for the journeyman lineman, crew leader, serviceman, the lineman position, I think is probably, I don't want to put a percentage or a 10x to it or anything like that, but it is definitely harder than what it was when we came up. And it's not anything to do with the actual work. It's everything to do with the expectation of the consumer and the expectation of management. There's the consumers, they go to social media also. They don't call anymore. They use social media to gripe because their lights were out for 15 minutes. Those things, and the men and women that are on that do line work, that are out there in the field, they're the front line ultimately. I mean, we talk about our front line employees or the front desk, the cashiers, the ladies answering the phone, and then our line workers, right? They're out there, and that level of pressure, it's easy for us as leaders in the industry to get focused on OSHA compliance, safety rules, and just all these compliance things. And we get really focused on that, and we make rules, and we have discussions about that. But what we're missing with our employees is educating them on the gap of knowledge between the business we're in and the consumers we serve. Because it's huge. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast.
100%.
It's like, I mean, no one in the general public really understands what happens behind that light switch. I mean,
They just know it's not working.
I've been in the business for 20 years and I'm still learning every day, right? Like, I mean, there's things that I still, as CEO, I'm like, dang, why didn't I even think about it that way, you know? And so that's the big challenge I don't think the industry's talking enough about. One of the other ones that frustrates me at times is we think, either because it's mandated or management, we've had an incident or a near miss or something, so we create a new rule. And it's a black and white rule, but we don't take the time to train on the why and how this rule actually applies and those type things. We're not loving on our people, I guess. That's not a popular word in this industry. Is we got to love on our people. And yeah, the rule probably does need to exist. And yes, our safety manual it needs to be like the Bible. I mean, there is a reason 99% 5% of those rules are in there, and they will, if you follow it, and if you don't know, or if it won't work for this situation, stop.
Yep.
Have a conversation about, hey, this is going to avoid, we're going to be in a danger zone here. How do we stop and correct this? Like, what do we got to do, even if it means turning the power off?
Yep.
What do we have to do to stay compliant and stay safe? But when we just make rules up because somebody did something wrong, and so we're going to try to make a new rule to I got you rule.
Yep.
We're going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And I know you've talked to a lot of young guys, right, that are coming to this. And my nephew, for instance, is getting into the trade, and I worry that we have overcomplicated things from a rules perspective to where we've created this false sense of security.
Yeah.
There's 100% cover up. 100% sleeves and gloves, cradle to the ground. Yeah, all these things that, in theory, sitting on a desktop in an engineering safety guy's office.
Sounds great.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
But what you just did, because that's all you told that guy, is like, if you do all this, you're safe.
Yeah.
You didn't tell him about what can happen with the CSP pot if you have no power on the secondary side, and the top side's energized, and you start shaking that pole too much, that the stinger inside is burnt off. It's floating, and if it touches the side of that can, it's untanking. If there's any air in there for it to untank, and
100%.
it's pouring hot oil down on you.
All over you.
And so, it's one of those that every safety rule in the book can't teach and train that part of the industry that we're going to lose if we're not careful.
And at a 14-hour day in the middle of the night, you may not be thinking about that. You're thinking about, man, I'm tired, I got to climb this one again. Okay, if we get this one done, we can go home.
Yeah.
But that training, if it's done the right way, you can fall back on that and be like, oh, hold on. Hey, Mike, remember, that stinger's floating around in there. Don't shake that thing, right?
Absolutely.
That's why the training's important. And I feel like our industry in general has started training for liability instead of training for knowledge. And I don't align with that, right? I think we need to get back to training for knowledge and making people be able to critical think and figure out why they're doing those things instead of just because we said so.
100% the case. And I want to back up just a little bit and talk about my first 6 months on the job.
Okay.
There was, and this is just a good example of exactly what you and I are talking about at the moment. Is when I first started, the first day, the first week or whatever, I didn't have all my climbing gear yet because I didn't know how to climb. So that wasn't something the company had to have ready for me the day I got there. But Billy understood that, like, hey, you're going to climb. I mean, it's coming. It's coming. We're a very rural co-op. I mean, you can't get a bucket truck to all the lines. A lot of these lines were set without equipment. I mean, they were set by hands, mules and stuff like that. So they're not designed just to drive up to in a bucket truck, right? And so what he did in the first weeks, months is I started climbing instead of a straight shank Brooks. The hook on the gaff on them is not that big and it's straight. I mean, there's no
forgiveness.
You have to know how to climb.
You keep your knees away from that pole.
Absolutely. And so that was one of the ways. And even after I got my Bachelins and my own climbing gear at lunch and things, or if we had a little simple like a lift pole or something like that, he'd catch me putting my stuff on. He'd say something. He'd say, "Hey, won't you climb on mine?" Because those are his hooks. He's still climbing in them, that much longer ago. And I'm like, well, why? And he was like, well, every pole, every great pole that you climb in the middle of the day with these style hooks is going to make you so much better in the middle of the night on that crappy pole when you got the better equipment, right? Because you got the right technique and all those type things. And that's all that training. Yeah, we can create rules that say you can't use those hooks anymore. But the training that I learned by climbing those old hooks made me so much better. And I also before fall restraint, right? Like I've free climbed everything. And so now with fall restraint, if we would allow guys with fall restraint, like from a harness or something like that, if we would spend some time with them actually free climbing, I believe it makes them a better climbing with the
100%.
I mean, it's like, why are we just like thinking, because we are creating a false sense of security with that buck squeeze, whatever brand you use, that you're not going to fall. Well, if you don't have that thing set right, you'll come to the bottom of the pole
100%.
Just as fast as, I mean, we all know that. We see the videos.
Well, and equipment fails, right?
Absolutely.
If you're up the top of a pole and you've got your secondary rope over something and you go to put your buck squeeze back on and that latch breaks and you don't know how to free climb and get down, you're stuck.
You're stuck.
And that's the issue I have with it is it makes guys use it as a crutch instead of as a tool.
That's right.
And you you need to learn how to be able to handle yourself in case that tool breaks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's on us. It's on the guys and gals inside the industry to keep that stuff going,
Yeah.
and not just go, okay, well, OSHA says that if you do this, you're good. OSHA doesn't know.
Nope.
OSHA's never been up there when that latch broke.
But forever, that training happened from the old timers.
That's right.
It didn't come from the safety
No,
department.
no,
It
no.
was the old timer looking
Yeah,
out for you
that's
because
right.
he's like, oh, hey, this kid's worth it. He's
Yeah.
trying.
Yeah.
I'm gonna help him out. I'm gonna make him better,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Because let's face it, the safety department's never gonna align with
No.
that kind of stuff.
No.
But you still have to be able to pour back into your crew and give back to your
Yep.
crew from a field perspective, I feel
Absolutely.
like. So let's talk about that transition a little bit, because you did your apprenticeship, you topped out, you were a lineman, and then you had some opportunities to advance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So was there a point where the guys stopped seeing you as Colby, their crew member, and started seeing you as, hey, he's a manager?
Yeah, and it was choppy at best.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, and some of that was the leadership at the time. Some of it was just the way it happened, and no fault on theirs. No fault on any of the leadership. It's just ultimately things get busy and you get a lot of stuff going. So how the nuts and bolts at a pretty high level started is, recall in the beginning when we talked about my electrical background, right,
Yep.
and doing low voltage inside wireman type work. So we had a lot of old electromechanical relays inside of our substations on our distribution feeders, and we were upgrading to microprocessors and changing out breakers, distribution breakers and things like that, to just start modernizing the substation equipment. And in doing that, we had to do a lot of low voltage wiring and conduit bending and all that kind of stuff. So I was a journeyman lineman, just journeyman out, and we had slowed down quite a bit because now we're past 2008. I mean, the housing, so like new residential services had kind of slowed down.
That
so
new construction wasn't happening.
Yeah, it wasn't, you know, we're doing maintenance type work and reliability type work, but it was like, okay, we don't need all three crews doing this all the time. So we need some guys to help the engineering firm that was helping us do all this stuff. We need some actual labor in the field, like labor in these substation and everything. So that's, as I was still taking call, you know, at night, and I was in the call rotation, those kind of things. But my day job was showing up and going in substations and rewiring all this stuff. Well, we got all the upgrades done, and then it was kind of this moment like, well, all this stuff's changed now.
No one knows how it works.
No one knows how it works except for me and another guy that helped, you know, put it all
putting it
in.
in,
We
yeah.
were there, and so it become one of those deals that substation inspections, things like that, started kind of falling over on me and another one of my coworkers, because we actually put this stuff in, and just I guess kind of the nerd in me, the inner nerd in me, also started seeing the availability of what else we could do because we have this technology, you know, and then it migrated into even more new age things with our metering systems and different things like that we had out there, because we had an AMI or an AMR system that we put in pretty early for a lot of the co-ops in 2000. So we started leveraging and trying to bring things together there. And so it wasn't an official move. I mean, I carried the journeyman lineman title and was really doing management
Sure.
level work kind of stuff, if
Yep.
that makes any sense.
Yep.
So that probably helped it a little bit, because I was still going out. If we had a big job or something like that, I was still going out with crew. I was still taking call.
Yep.
I mean, I was out there, I was taking secondary calls and things like that. So it wasn't like a moment that one day I was doing line work and then the next day I wasn't.
Yeah, you didn't walk out in work boots and come in in
that's
loafers, right?
No, not at all. So the piece of it that is kind of missing from this story, and if you're all right with it, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into the union side of it, is during that time we also unionized. We ended up bringing the IBW in. Some reasons that it's irrelevant, it doesn't matter, but for Arkansas, that's a pretty big deal.
Sure.
I mean, it's a right to work state. So there was just some challenges that we saw as not being fair.
Yep.
I could argue today that we may have not have fully grasped what all was going on,
Sure.
but regardless, today it doesn't matter. I mean, we ended up unionizing, and I ended up becoming a union steward during the process. Part of it was because even though I was married, I had no kids. It was just my wife and I, And I was a little bit on the wilder side, I guess. If you, I mean, kind of, I'd gotten that lineman chip, like I can do this even if I have to go somewhere else kind of mentality. And so that gave me the opportunity to actually be a leader that I probably didn't recognize that it was just born with, and say, hey guys, you got kids, you've got, if something goes south in all this, you're not going to get to keep working here. I mean, one way or another, you know,
they'll find a reason.
They'll find a reason. And so if that does happen, I'm all right with it. I mean, and so it was just, it was that opportunity to kind of step forward. Well, I stepped forward and become union steward, but then also this stuff with the substation that just went over was happening, still going out with the guys. What got real easy for the guys that were just on line crew every day to start questioning, like, hey, does Colby really have our best interests at heart? Because I mean, we were getting it ready for our second round of negotiations, and there was, you know, some controversial type things, and I had a perspective because I was a little bit closer to management and a little bit deeper understanding of why the company was having to make these changes, and I'm trying to articulate those back to the union guys, you know, and they're you know, just basically, you're a sellout, you're, you know, kind of thing. So
but that happens so much.
Oh yeah.
Even as a steward, you have to sit in meetings and have conversations that the everyday guy out in the field doesn't have, and you get a different perspective on some of that. That doesn't mean you don't have their best interest at heart. It just means that maybe they have some blinders on and they're not seeing everything either.
Dude.
Okay, so go on.
Yeah, that's precisely what was happening. And no matter how hard you tried to sit down and have those conversations, remember, we're all busy too. It's not like you just get a day to go sit down and strategically plan or something like that, you know, and have these conversations. So it got strained, and you know, there was guys that, you know, the year before I was hanging out with on the river every day or every Saturday or something like that, that it just, I didn't get that phone call anymore. And those kind of things. And I look back at it and I have no idea, to be honest with you, Tom, why that didn't ever get in my emotions, but for whatever reason it didn't. I kept just trying to go forward with, I'm trying to make the best decisions with the information I have at the moment. And we got to make a decision. Like, not making a decision is making a decision.
Exactly.
You know, we can't just sit here and just keep going and think everything's just going to work out. We got to do something. And so there was I'd say roughly a year that it was really weird, and then it came to a head. And luckily, he's actually our construction and service manager now. He was one of the lead linemen that I worked under at times. That he and I had a very hard conversation. It was just man to man kind of thing. I mean, it was both, like, the emotions were boiling. We were both almost in tears. We were so mad. Like, but we found some common ground, right? Like, he finally understood that it wasn't, and I stepped down as steward because it wasn't a good role for me to be in, and somebody else needed to step up, and so being okay with, don't let it go so long. That I guess for any of the guys that could be in a position like this to where things are getting a little, stop and have the conversation before it has to get that emotional. Like, don't let yourself get to a position that the only way you can end up talking about it is to be mad. I mean, and that's tough for guys in our industry.
100%.
You know, because I mean, you start talking, like I said earlier, the word love, like that's not, I mean, like, wait a minute, like we're getting a little too touchy-feely, right? And even just sitting down and trying to, you know, just keep that relationship built between the brothers that are there, because you got to have each other. And so the kind of getting back to the actual question is that transition for me, it happened it was about a 3-year process to actually go from being on the line crew to officially no longer being on the line crew.
Okay.
And even after moving into operations supervisor was my first management title. Even after moving in, we were a really small shop. So in big storms and stuff, I was still in the field. But we had gotten past all of that. The next challenge that came, though, even though we had gotten through that 3-year kind of weird period and we've had some of these hard conversations and everything, the next challenge that happened is it was still hard for me, even when the hard calls had to be made, of not wanting to default back into, well, I think I can, you know, they messed this up, but I think I can round the corners on it a little bit and get down the road. There's a few of those, and I would never call them like the worst decisions I ever made, but there's a few times I wished I'd have been a little more rigid. And just kind of kept it black and white. But
it's hard to remove yourself like that, though, especially when you spent that many years as part of those crews, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can relate to a lot of that. I also was union steward, negotiating committee, all of that stuff, right? And I feel like you were saying, that the guys kind of quit inviting you to stuff and stuff like that. Sometimes that's part of just being a leader, and everybody has chapters in their lives, and it's okay to outgrow some of those chapters sometimes, right? Because when you know you're doing the right thing, if they don't see it, that's on them. But having that communication is so important. And I would have guys all the time, they would want to come to me and complain about something because they knew I would speak up. Well, that also makes you a target. If you're a union steward that's vocal, that company that you're talking to, they look at you a little bit differently too. Because now they know you're going to bring problems to them, and every time you walk up to talk to them, it's, oh gosh, here's Tom again. And that's no fun either, right? So I maybe didn't do the best at some of that, and maybe approached some of the issues that people brought to me a little more aggressively than I should have. But I was trying to look out for the best of everybody.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's a hard position to be in. People don't realize that. So,
you gotta, if somebody just took our words today as like, I'm going to do it this way. Remember, there's a perspective here also. We're small. At the time, we probably were 35 total employees across the whole organization. So, some of the things I talk about don't necessarily resonate in a co-op or an IOU or a contractor that's got 150, 200 linemen. Like there's nuances to this. So some of the we got a disclaimer a little bit.
for sure. So how was that transition mentally for you when you finally got to that point where you're a supervisor and you're noticing, hey, when I walk up, everybody quits talking all of a sudden. Right?
Yeah. So still, just my wife and I. So and the reason I say that is, let me add a little context. Your personal life does impact your work life.
Yes.
No matter, and if you're telling yourself at any point in your career, or whatever career you're in, if you're telling yourself that's not the case, you're telling yourself a very dark lie. And keeping it separate, trying to separate life, personal life and work life, especially in this industry, is a dark road to go down. I mean, there's a whole lot of my success in even navigating this time is because of my wife, Terry. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And it wasn't always like we just sat down and had these, deep, complex conversations or anything, but she was always there. Like, and always that reassuring kind of rock.
Listening.
That's right. And being willing, she was willing to call me out when I was being stupid and hard-headed, and
which the guys at work wouldn't do sometimes.
No, that's right. And couldn't do it to the level that she could, you know. But she was also the rock that whole time during this, that, hey, you keep doing what you think's right, and if this doesn't work out for us, we can move somewhere else, And
there's options.
So there's options. There's options. There was options for us because we didn't have a family. I mean, it was just she and I. So that there's some of that allowed me to be able to probably be a little bit more rigid than some can at times, because you're worried about feeding the family and all those kind of things. So it wasn't ever like really, really hard. Like there wasn't ever a moment where I'm just like, holy cow, like I don't know what to do here. And I was always able to make a decision, like, and stick to it. But off the knowledge I had at the moment, and so we got through them pretty good.
Good deal. So one thing I want to add to that too is, the work life and the family life it definitely is tied together. But there's a difference between bringing drama from home to work.
Oh yeah.
Drama has to stay at home, right? You get in an argument about whatever at home, you can't come to work as a lineman, as a supervisor, carry that with you, because there's too much other important stuff going on inside those gates. Right?
Absolutely.
So that's important for me.
That's another good disclaimer to add to this.
100%.
I do agree with that.
Yeah. You mentioned the 2008 kind of era, right? So let's talk about, because I know about that time was an ice storm, 2009-ish or so, right? That hit a lot of the country. So let's talk about kind of that ice storm and how that kind of affected you.
Yeah. So I was, I guess, blessed with the fact that I came in and we had pretty good weather. I mean, we had storms and stuff that hit our system and all that, but this is post Katrina. Katrina was one of the first ones that our guys actually left and went, and that was before I was even working there, but they actually went and worked a big storm like that. And in 2009, North Arkansas kind of the whole north part of the state got hit with a really, really heavy ice storm. We got hit with one in like 2000, again, prior to coming to work at the co-op. And so we got the call needing mutual aid. One of the real interesting things about the co-ops, especially in the state of Arkansas, is there's obviously a real mutual aid agreement between us all, but it's a kind of a unwritten rule that if one of the other co-ops, we're rolling. Yep. I mean, it's, it's
you call me and say you need help, right. I'm going to figure out how to help you.
That's right. And so I've been there, 4 years basically when we got the call, and I guess I was a fourth year fixing to top out, but anyhow, we get the call to go help, and the first co-op that we got called to go to was Ozark Electric, and they're in the Fayetteville area, and so anybody that's familiar with Northwest Arkansas, that's a very dense population area, but at the same time, it's very rural right outside of the main corridors that you go through, and so the ice impacted them big time. I don't know. I wouldn't have even thought to ask like
numbers,
how many. Numbers wise.
No.
I just know when we rolled in,
it was bad.
It was bad.
Stuff on the ground.
Stuff on the ground. And so you have all these little storm events that you had worked at home, and you see how much it impacts the lives of people, and how grateful they are, even if they're upset that they've been out for 2 or 3 days. They're bringing you coffee or water or whatever the case is, depending on the time
package
of year.
Cookies.
Yeah, that's right.
All kinds of stuff.
And you just think, well, at home, that's because they're your members and they love you.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And then you go off and work on another system, and you realize those people are the same members at the end of the day that you served at home, and you get to climbing poles in the back of cow pastures and doing things in a system that's 4 hours away from home, and that same joy that you bring to those people. And that, for me, Tom, I mean, like I said, I've been in the business for about 4 years at that point. That's when it sealed the deal for me. That's when I knew and at the time I thought it was being a lineman until I retired, right? We weren't even into some of the stuff we just talked about a little bit ago. I just made the assumption that this is what I'm going to retire doing.
Yeah.
Because there's so much joy out of it. And seeing groups of guys and gals come together and working for people they didn't know at all, but you couldn't, when we'd come into the mill hall at night, that was in the warehouse basically, that kind of makeshift whatever you can to keep everybody fed and all that type stuff. Ladies from the community, from local churches and things like that, being there in the mornings with Walmart sacks full of goodies to get you through the day and all these kind of things. When you seen that all come together, it's like, dude, this is way more than a paycheck. Yeah. I mean, this is we're working for an actual mission here.
The gratitude and respect that come with this trade is like nothing I've ever seen before, right?
Yep.
I mean, you can be out working for 10 hours and it's 11 o'clock at night and you have to pull your bucket truck into a gas station and fuel up, and somebody could pull up, roll their window down and just say, hey, thank you.
Absolutely.
Stuff like that just doesn't happen everywhere.
No, that's a fact.
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I've also had people where I've worked 14 hours straight through the rain, and I have to go to Denny's to get a cup of coffee at 3 o'clock in the morning because that's the only place open. And somebody walks up and says, must be nice. My power's out.
Yeah, absolutely.
It goes both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. There's both edges of that sword. There's no doubt.
That gratitude does hit home, and it makes it like you have passion for it because it's something to be proud of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's part of the co-op's theme too, right? Is they rally together behind themselves a lot more than most other parts of this industry do, to be honest.
Yeah, I definitely am very passionate about the co-op model. I mean, I've lived and breathed it for a little over 20 years now, down to the fact my license plate says Go Co-op in the state of Arkansas. It's the only one. So,
that's
awesome.
It's
just, it got in my DNA. And I believe the co-op model is something that a lot of the rest of the world ought to look at for other things. I mean, there's a little bit of it in education and a little bit of it in some of the farmer and agricultural type stuff. But, reality is that we, the co-op model, because you're owned and governed by the people you serve. So it keeps that local touch and that local, it keeps you grounded.
Yep.
And that just really resonated with me early in life. And so I'm pretty biased that it's the best business model there is in the industry. But, but we do come together at a whole nother level that, no difference than, the conference you're joining us with this week, and being a part of here is this the Arkansas co-ops getting together and talking about, what's coming up and what's in the past, but we need to learn from it, those type things. And the conversations are like, how do we improve the safety program? How do we need to get more in the first years of getting the young linemen to understand how to communicate with a member, like, stuff that and when we came up, nobody ever gave you any training on actually how to talk to a member at the door or a consumer at the door. It was like they taught you how to wire the transformer, climb the pole, and all that kind of stuff. Well, going back to how we talked about in the beginning, you got to be able to talk to that member, because in some of the areas we're at, even if their power's out, you better be careful. Right. Because you might get shot at just because they don't know who you are.
Yep. They don't want you there. They don't know you.
That's a fact. So, there's things like that I think the co-ops do a really good job with, not just at the state level, at the national level. And we definitely roll out on storm work and different things, no matter where we need to go. We've been to Florida, Georgia, every state in between here in South Carolina. And that's a pretty good haul to ride a bucket truck from, from Arkadelphia, Arkansas to Lee County. So, but we definitely come together quick and make the call and get after it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, as a lineman, what's something that you worried about every day when you were going to work that you don't worry about today, right? Something for you personally.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a hard one for me to put it into something that I don't worry about, that I did worry about, but I don't worry about anymore. Okay. Because there's not much inside the industry that I think I worry about it, and some of it I worry more about it than I did before.
Okay.
But the one that truly keeps me, I guess, awake at night, if you will, something like that, is what I learned early from Billy and the other guys is like, hey, safety matters. And doing the job right, that matters, and being there for your brother, whoever that is beside you on the ground, down the road, flipping the switch, whatever the case is that's something that really mattered to me. Making sure that I was learning to climb as good as anybody that could teach me, and then pouring into somebody else under me to do that. Well, today, what's changed for me is that worry hasn't gone away. It's now I'm not out there anymore. So I can't physically or verbally say to a young guy that's got his butt squeezed too loose, I can't say like, hey, stop, you need to tighten that up, or work with him in the training yard.
Hey man, you need to do it like this.
That's right.
Yeah.
So now the worry is still the same, but now it's, okay, how do we keep pouring and loving into our people to where there's somebody out there that does what I tried to do, back when I was out there in the field.
The control of those hazards.
That's right.
Is almost out of your hands now, right?
Yeah, it's decentralized command.
Yeah,
I'm not a military guy, but it's a very big thing. And the way I understand in the military and places like that is you got to have that training level, and keep pouring into it. Yeah. So that's a big challenge for me. I think is making sure we're doing that right, and not allowing the organization to get so busy with compliance and other things that we lose that. Kind of going back to where we were talking about earlier, right? Like, it is my job to make sure we're doing things right, but we can't get so busy that we're just going to make a new rule and never train that guy or
100%,
gal.
100%.
So.
And I feel like you spent time in the field, and in doing that, that never leaves you, right? They say once a Marine, always Marine.
Yep.
It's kind of the same thing for linemen. I feel like when you've been in the field and you've done that, you always kind of you have that in the back of your mind all the time. This industry went through a stretch there, like when I was in high school and I was graduating, everyone told us, hey, go to college. Mm-hmm. If you don't go to college, you're not anybody. You're an idiot. The only people that go into the trades are the people who can't cut it in college. If you want to do anything, you have to go to school. So when that happened, our industry kind of made a flip. That used to be all the people making decisions used to come from the field. Mm-hmm. And then it made that flip about that same time where now we're putting people who have a piece of paper on the wall in those offices, right? Yep. Do you feel like there's a lot of gap there and we would be better off with people getting more involved in the field work? Or do you think from where your guys is at, you've got a pretty good grasp on that and it stays pretty relevant? Yeah,
I think there is a gap. I don't know. The only thing I would push back is saying that like, especially if we went like an all-in statement, that really executive leadership, the upper leadership, at least in some form or fashion, has to have field experience. That's not the right answer either.
No, you can't make that, right?
No,
industry-wide, that can't happen.
You can't do that. And there's things about the industry that's changed so much that it's not just the poles and wires and climbing the poles anymore. There is things that the industry has to keep embracing and keep doing. That a guy that only had field experience is going to have a hard time with.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, I recognize it, and there's what I have to do, because I did come from there without all the college paperwork and all that things, right? Is I got to hire those people that can overcome my shortcomings, but the industry overall, if we lose touch with the outside, and I would argue I see that in some of the other parts of the industry,
yep.
is we get, whether it's profit motivated, whether it's political agenda motivated, we lose sight of actually what matters, and that's the consumers at the end of the line. I'm using the word consumers because this podcast is to multiple. For us, it's members,
right?
And so it's a little bit easier for us to stay engaged because they literally are my bosses.
They're more involved.
They're more involved. They
100%.
elect our directors. Our directors are members, are consumers, and there's not a financial investment that the board is even made of. So it's a little bit easier for the co-ops to stay close to it than it is maybe other models, but you can't forget who we work for. Whether you're investor-owned, whether you're a contractor, because none of this business exists without the ratepayers, without the consumers, right? And then as a leader in the organization, whether you're CEO or any title in there, a manager, whatever you are, you can't forget who you work for ultimately. But then once you get into leadership, you got to remember who works for who is on the front lines and those. And so I guess if you look at it like kind of a customer model, if we just owned a retail shop or something, if we owned a gas station, what we're worried about, or a restaurant or something, what we're worried about is that customer coming in and out of the door and that experience.
Sure.
Well, once you move into management, the way I see it is, I've got to worry about the people that are interacting with those. And so these are my customers.
Yeah.
I got to show up and be the best I can for my employees, so that way they can be the best for those. And no matter what your background is, if you lose sight of that, you're done. It's not going to work. It may work for 5 or 6 years, but it's going to ultimately crumble.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I did an episode. Oh yeah, 100%. So I did an episode with Johnny Priest, and I feel like he did an amazing job throughout his career of staying involved with the people in the field.
Yep.
And he even
Yep.
talked about that. He'd go buy a watermelon
Yep.
and pull a crew underneath the tree, and
Yep.
they'd talk or whatever. As a CEO, you don't see that very often. And as a matter of fact, I was at a conference late last year, and it was a lot of executive level people,
Mm-hmm.
right, in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And the presenter on the stage asked a question of who's been in the field in the last month.
Yeah.
No one in
hands.
that room raised their hand.
Yeah, no hands.
200 people in the room.
Yeah.
No one raised their hand.
Yeah.
And I kind of looked at that, and as a lineman, that's kind of foreign to me, right? Because that's my happy place.
Oh, yeah.
I hate
Absolutely.
the emails. I hate the computers. I have to
Absolutely.
make myself do that
Yeah.
stuff. Being in the field is my happy
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
But for these people to say they haven't even been in the field for,
Oh, yeah.
that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm at a lot of these, and you hear that. And I'll give you one example of a time where I got a phone call from a fellow CEO that he's retired now. So and the call was, I believe there was some talks. I didn't get to the very bottom of it, but I believe there was some talks of maybe unionizing inside his organization. And so he called me because obviously he knew my background.
Been there, done that.
Been
Yeah.
there, done that. He was, it was a simple question. He said, "What should I do?" And so I asked him. I said, "Well, I got a simple follow-up question because I don't know if I can help you." And I said, "How many linemen do you have?" I had a pretty good idea. He told me the number, and it was a lot. Big organization. And I said, "Well, how in the last 30 days, or the last week, or the last 90 days, the last year? I don't care. Just tell me the time. How many times have you had an individual conversation with one of those guys?" And it was dead silence on the other end of the line. Now, granted, this is a CEO of a large organization.
Yep.
And I understand why he hasn't. It's real easy to get behind that. And so it was zero. And I said, okay. I knew the answer before I asked. Who is the next in command under you that that can answer that question and how often. And thankfully, it was literally the next guy under him in operations that does still get in the field and all that kind of stuff. And so I told this gentleman, I said, that guy is who I need to talk to, or that you need to go talk to, because the only that, I mean, I'm not saying the CEO has to be in the field every day by any stretch of the imagination. They can't.
No.
They literally can't.
No.
Probably bad for the organization if they are.
Right.
But if you're going to make real change and keep relationships going, you have to have a direct connection from the boardroom to the line.
Yep.
And to the front desk. You know, it doesn't. I mean, the member services people in our business, we call them member service reps, right? They have to be. There has to be a clean funnel of information back and forth and communication and relationship built between the two.
Yeah, you have to stay in touch with those people.
You have to stay in touch.
Yeah. When you started as CEO, was it just electric? Did you have the broadband aspect at that point too?
Yeah. So we started the broadband. I made it to operations manager. So my transition, I went from, you know, kind of an engineer, journeyman lineman to engineering tech, I think was my actual official title, like journeyman lineman / engineering technician. And then officially into operations as operations supervisor. And when I first moved into operations supervisor, I was over our right away, and directly over our line crews service and line crews and everything. And then I started moving into a little bit more operations manager type level, and we started the fiber project. And because I had so much system knowledge and all that type of stuff, and the operations manager was getting near retirement, that I oversaw a lot of the outside plant build when we started the fiber subsidiary. And then he retired, and I was operation manager for both. So the fiber subsidiary had been going for 4 years, a little over 4 years.
Okay.
Whenever I become CEO.
Okay. So what kind of challenges does that bring today? Because I know there's a huge push for expansion of fiber and getting it to everybody, and that affects you guys as a rural co-op, right?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and there's a lot. This is where it gets really hard. It kind of goes back to that regulated monopoly discussion we were just having.
Okay.
Is broadband and internet is completely deregulated.
Yep.
And so what's happening now, especially without turning this into a broadband discussion too much, what's especially happening now is there's a lot of grants and things like that are being poured into these areas that's like South Central went out building these areas, not really expecting competition out there. And so you build a model that makes it, because nobody's ever went out there before, right? Kind of like the 30s on the electric side.
Sure.
But remember, the electric side has stayed regulated for the most part, and so we don't have another person coming in and creating competition. It's all based off of regulation. So now the challenge is becoming like, hey, competition's coming in these areas, and that we went out and built 4, 5, 6 years ago, and consumers and government agencies and things thinks that's healthy, but it makes it really noisy and really volatile, because they'll come in, it could be some big investor-owned, multi-billion-dollar backed company that'll come in and they'll deliver service for 6 months for $25 a month, where ours is pushing 70, and they swap. They have no service, no customer service whatsoever, and then, oh, by the way, in a year their bill's twice as high as what we ever were in the first place.
Yep.
And so there's that dynamic and
they're using your infrastructure to do it.
Yeah,
the stuff you guys put in.
Yeah, absolutely,
right?
Definitely not. We've been, us personally, we've been blessed with none that have tried to lease or use our actual fiber infrastructure we put in, but they are attaching to our infrastructure, our poles.
Yeah, which changes the engineering of everything.
Absolutely, it does. And we have to, agree or disagree. It doesn't really matter for this, but by the Public Service Commission rules, we have to allow them to attach. I mean, it's not, we can't tell them no, even though, there's pole attachment agreements and things like that, but it's still, it's a weird dichotomy, I guess.
For sure. So a lot of things changing in the industry, broadband being one of them, right? But what in the industry makes you excited about the future? What's coming down the pipeline that you see that you're like, oh man, this is going to be awesome? Yeah,
well, I get a little deep on this one, because I don't know if I'm excited or scared to death.
Sometimes they're the same.
Yeah, that's right. So I do, and I'm not, I hope I don't scare people away from your podcast by saying something like this, but what is exciting, challenging, the opportunity or whatever, is from my opinion, the electric industry holds the destiny of the United States in its hands.
Right.
I mean, ultimately it does. Yep. We're electrifying everything.
Everybody relies on it.
Everybody relies on it.
Yep.
I mean, I will wait on somebody to tell me that they don't.
Yep.
You know, and so when we get into discussions, AI, data centers, or manufacturing, or, you know, the defense industry and how to support the defense industry, any of those things, they all determine on what decisions the electric industry makes.
Yep.
I mean, they really do. As of lately, I don't think our government bodies and agencies and things put enough emphasis on that, and they make decisions that I mean, sometimes I can get behind them. Like, I understand where in that, if you're just looking at that one little micro decision, I understand why you think that way, why you think that's great, whether it's renewables or coal. Like, right. I mean, either direction, like either side of it, I can understand where that goes from. But what we've got to realize is that the electric industry, the electric sector, especially generation and transmission side right now, and it trickles right into distribution at the end of the day, is if we don't focus on a real plan that's sustainable, that's not every 4 years it changes.
Yep.
We're in a really, really bad shape.
And all those decisions have a ripple effect that comes with them, right?
Absolutely.
So those all kind of fight each other, if you will, right?
Yes.
If you throw a rock in over here and I throw a rock in over there in a pond, those waves are going to kind of hit and battle and do all that. That's kind of what happens with the decisions every time it changes 4 years, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's hard to manage.
It is. It is so hard to manage, and that's the, you know, we're so blessed to live in the greatest country in the world by a long shot, but part of that blessing is becoming a curse. We're also extremely arrogant. I mean, extremely entitled as a nation. Yep. I mean, it's
society
not,
as a whole.
It's not fun to talk about. I mean, there's people that'll comment on this podcast that, you know, I'm being too hard, but it's just the reality. I mean, you can't take a minute too long in the drive-through without somebody honking at you.
That's
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
And you might have just bought their lunch for them, and they don't even know it. You know, and they may be mad at you because you bought their lunch. You know, I mean, we want to be mad about everything nowadays, but that doesn't even concern me as much as the fact is we make decisions without understanding those ripples, and the electric grid is the future and not just for the United States. It's why you see countries like China and other places that are just building infrastructure like crazy with no regard to any EPA rule. And so if we get behind any more than we already are, it's going to be a real trouble. I mean, you know, and there's really three legs in that stool. I think it's not just the electric industry. It does determine, I mean, the oil and gas industry also has got to stay with the times. I mean, because if we truly are going to shut all the coal-fired plants down, then we got to have natural gas because there's not an intermittent resource and batteries aren't there.
Nope.
You know, there's not another resource that can back up the depletion of coal-fired plants.
Right.
Nuclear is obviously a real answer, but it's also not politically correct in most areas, right? And
people don't even like the term.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
And so we're lying to ourselves that we can shut all the coal down and we can do natural gas, but pipeline infrastructures aren't there. We don't want to build new pipelines. We shut those down every time we get started. I mean, you and I can go on and on, you know. So it's an exciting thing. I mean, we pour a lot of energy into it here in Arkansas, of discussing, you know, what can we do and stay compliant and those type things. But the general public has to understand that if we continue to push these narratives that, you know, we're killing the whole world, without any true fact to back it up, it's not a good plan.
Right.
It's not
sustainable.
No, it's not. It's not.
So with demand going through the roof for electricity, right? I mean, they're putting warnings out about, hey, we may have to cut people off power because there's so much demand out there, that kind of stuff. And with you guys being a co-op, a lot of your system isn't built for huge demand, right? Is that a big issue that you're tackling right now? Is it wire upgrades and pole changes coming your way, and you have to budget all of that, right? Like all of that's a challenge. It's
Absolutely,
gotta be.
Absolutely. And the one thing I'd like, you know, to really put a pin in is what the general population also is missing is that a lot of the demand you were just talking about has nothing to do with AI, has nothing to do with anything else. This is like literal demand
Yep.
that is just going up because
Yep.
of load growth.
Yep.
And so, like I told
Air conditioners, people getting more appliances, all of that
Absolutely.
stuff, right?
Absolutely.
And people don't want to go without power anymore.
100%.
20 years ago, somebody went without power. Oh, they didn't open the fridge. Not a big deal.
No.
Now, if you pull up to a house and they've been out of power an hour, they act like they're in the
Absolutely.
worst thing that's ever happened.
Yep.
It's crazy.
And going back to that entitled, a little bit of arrogance that we have, we also, and the world's gotten busy. I mean, even homes that are still together, both parents work, all these different things. And so the old way of doing things in rural America especially is, in the 20, just a little over 20 years that I've been in this business, when we drove out in the middle of winter to go do a job or a little storm hit or something like that, you saw smokestacks with at homes. People were burning wood.
Sure.
They were doing things that didn't pull on the grid as hard. Well, now it's nobody has time to chop wood.
Nope.
Or they don't want the smell of it in their house or whatever the case is. So we're relying on electric heat because a lot of our service area there's not natural gas. So it's propane or electric heat. And so, Tom, we've went from, we've got 2 different substations that are in the plan to upgrade and be rebuilt that are 100% being rebuilt and upgraded due to winter demand.
Which is a new thing for you.
For our system for years was always about the summer demand for air conditioning load and that kind of thing. And so you can take one of our substations that's the first on the list. The summer demand on it is fine. It's well under the capacities of that substation, but winter demand, it pushes 115%.
Yeah.
Because of all these electric space heaters and everything. And that's an education thing. And I think the co-ops are doing a good job. We could do better, and
Everybody
we know that.
could. But that came faster than anybody realized.
Dude, it came overnight.
Yeah.
Like we just got, I guess the old lineman comes out at me a little bit every now and then. It's like we just got too soft.
Yeah,
Right. We got too soft. Nobody knows how to chop wood anymore.
Yeah.
So
not only do they want air conditioning at home, but they want air conditioning at the cabin where they're hunting and fishing at and everything else anymore.
Absolutely.
That used to never happen.
Yeah, no, that's a fact. Yeah.
It's not roughing it anymore sometimes.
100%. Yeah.
All right. So when I found out we were going to sit down and do this, right, I came up with like a list of questions that I was like, I'm going to ask Colby some stuff, right? So first thing that pops in your mind, I just got a stack of some questions here.
Okay.
You ready for that?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right. So what was your favorite tool as a lineman? One tool, you could pick it. What is it?
So it was battery powered anything was my favorite one that we just were getting those. So before it was always hydraulics or it was a bracing bit or something like that.
Yep.
So our first was, battery powered impacts and things like that. There's probably some folks that listen to this and be like, y'all didn't have those, so.
And you took care of it when you got it.
Yeah.
You didn't throw it down.
That's right.
You didn't put it in the bottom of the bucket.
No, it was one of those things. But for me directly, personally, we had one crew that had a really nice, a big bucket, is 50-foot truck, and it actually, we had an air compressor on it, and so it had a hose reel and all that type stuff. So for like framing poles and all that type, we could actually use air instead of dragging out the old cords for the generator off the digger derrick or something like that. So probably just in general the hand tools. Pneumatic or battery powered was probably one of the favorite
Life changer.
things. They were, because you just got to be so much more efficient.
All right, so you're walking out of the office of a morning as a lineman, and you're going to go get in a truck, and there's 2 of them sitting there. One's Alltech, one's a Terex. Which one are you getting in?
Yeah. I was always weird. It didn't matter to me. Whatever was clean, stocked, and ready to rock.
Okay.
It didn't.
The rest of it's just a truck.
It was just a truck.
Okay. Nice.
We could nitpick the mess out of
Sure,
this
sure.
and all that.
Sure.
But and probably the one that is hydraulic only and not electric over hydraulic is also the one I'm going with.
Right.
Because that was the other thing that
Oh,
started happening.
Just a different operation. When you're used to that hydraulic only, it was so
Yeah.
much more smooth.
Yeah.
You could control it.
Yeah.
So climbing a pole or doing it underground?
Definitely climbing.
Okay.
And I say that just because of the pride, I guess, in it. I actually enjoyed underground. There's always a new challenge to underground, right?
Sure.
You can't. Troubleshooting is a real art. There's art in troubleshooting, period, overhead or underground, but underground, it takes another level of skill because there's not any way to look and find that blowing arrestor or whatever the case is.
It's a lot more of solving problems and figuring stuff out because you can't see it.
That's right.
the machine's telling me this. What if it's this? You know, there's just so much stuff to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, biggest pet peeve you see in line work today?
Well, and it's not. I may have 2 or 3 answers to this one because there's several. The first one we hit on earlier is the disconnect from our consumer base to the actual industry, and that's not the consumer's fault.
Right.
I mean that I want to stress that. I think it's
a system failure.
It's a system failure.
Yep.
We were able to go for 80 whatever year, 100 years or whatever of not having to educate the consumers on what actually happens.
Nuances.
What actually happens behind the light switch.
Yep.
And you and I guarantee you are guilty of doing the same thing, knowing the power is out and walking into a room and flipping the switch, thinking something's going to happen, because it's just in our DNA.
You just do it.
You just do it.
Yep.
You don't know any different. So that one, that's a pet peeve that I hate that we have let it happen in the industry. We should have known better. But I guess the biggest one for me, and I've listened to Johnny Priest episode as well, and he really hammered on it, is the guys that get in the trade and they do it for a paycheck, and they don't ever, because it's a great business to be in. I mean, it is, especially if you don't have the want to, or the maybe just college isn't for you kind of thing. It's definitely a great trade to get into. Pretty sure it's going to be around for a long time,
right.
Unless we ultimately fail miserably, and then nothing's going to matter, back to the point that the grid is what makes this world work. And so the guys that just, are only there for a paycheck to go buy a new truck, and I'm not talking about the young ones. I'm talking about the guys that have been there for 30 years that are still have that mentality.
Yep.
That's a real shortcoming that happens, I think. And you see it in other industries that are tough like this, that are hard work, but that one probably drives me the craziest.
And I feel like those people that are just after the paycheck and they don't really have a passion for the industry, they get beat down by it, right?
Yes.
And what I mean by that is they end up kind of hating life.
Yes.
They're bitter. They're mad at
Yes.
work. They're mad when they're at home.
Yes.
They don't like it. Yeah, it's a good paycheck,
Yeah.
but they don't
Yeah.
enjoy anything about it. So now they're just angry all the time.
No, that's a fact.
Yeah.
And to your point, it starts impacting their personal life
Right.
at a level. And I mean, I've never done the research on this, but I've got to assume that the lineman profession has a pretty high divorce rate.
Yeah, it definitely does.
It's just you hear about police and different things like that, and it's so unfortunate because this trade, no matter if you're at a utility or anywhere you're at inside this industry, there is a real opportunity for generational changes and wealth and different things like that. But you've got to be willing to sit down and have conversations and understand it, and not just show up because this contractor over here pays a better per diem and all that kind of stuff. It just becomes a real problem.
Right.
And then there's not the other benefits. I
No.
mean, it starts going home with you, and you kicking your dog when you walk in. That's not.
And technology and social media has made that part worse.
Oh, yes.
Because it's
Absolutely.
easier for them to hunt those jobs and find those
Yes.
jobs now.
Yes.
So they just continually jump from one to the other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so one thing every apprentice should know in your mind. What do you think that is?
Well, first of all, you got to show up every day. And you got to be willing, and I mean, again, this one probably resonates for me through no matter how long you've been in the business, is there's something to learn every single day on this job. I mean, there's not a day that you, if you ever walk in to work one day, even at the CEO or as a grunt, and say, I've got this all figured out, you better go find something else to do.
100%.
I mean, and I couldn't stress that enough to, especially a young guy, and because you got to keep learning all the time. Because there's no poll that you've ever worked that was the exact same as the one the day before.
Never.
I mean, even if there was a line of C1s and we were going to set out and re-insulate them, right? There's still a difference between every single one of them. I mean, the ground rot could be different on one. You could have checked the first one, good pole. They are all set the same day, but if you don't stop and take the time to sound that next pole, it could have been in a wet hole and it's rotted off of the ground and you don't even know it. I mean, there's not a time that you can ever go, I know it all.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't matter.
Being willing to learn and having your ego in check to where you're capable of learning.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yep.
Because those are two different things.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
your knowledge base gets better every day. Right? And so even that lesson that you pick up on, it hits different.
Yep.
I mean, if you read or if you listen to podcasts or whatever the case is, you can listen to a book, read a book or listen to a podcast, and then go back and listen to it 6 months later or a year later or something like that. And likely it's going to hit different because there's been life events. Read the Bible. I mean, can't tell you how many times I've read different chapters of the Bible, and when I was 18 and read it, I got about this much out of it. And then you go back at 40 and read it, and you're like, oh man, I was way off base with what was actually being said. So there's that piece that I really encourage anybody, no matter what role you're in, is like, remember going back. Continuous learning is because your knowledge base just keeps going up, and things, you have a different perception.
As a CEO, what's the hardest day you've had?
The hardest day I've had as CEO, boy, there's a lot of them.
and for different reasons,
yeah,
I'm sure.
all of them are different reasons. So, there wasn't ever one that I'd say was the worst day ever or anything like that. But the hardest one is, without getting any detail whatsoever, is getting a phone call that somebody's had an incident, right? And I've had two of them since being CEO. Both ended with guys 100% fine, 100% back to work. They're absolute best case scenarios, right? But
in that
moment, there's no part of it I want to ever go through again because you don't know.
That's right.
I mean, you don't.
And then your brain races.
Yes,
right. And you do care about the people, and that is hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it goes back to in the beginning of being my brother's keeper, right? Like that part of this industry will never leave me. Is that the whole way to the hospital, on the one occasion especially, the whole way I was sitting there thinking, like, where did I go wrong? Like, how did I allow
How
this
did
to
I
happen?
fail that guy?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's, this industry doesn't harp enough on extreme ownership. I mean, I love Jocko Willick's book on it. I mean, it is as crystal clear as it gets.
Yep.
Because I do believe that there's a way to prevent or avoid a lot of incidents that happen. You notice I'm not calling them accidents.
Right.
There are a few accidents out there that sometimes safety people would come up with some really wild way that could have been avoided.
Right.
And I still have yet to figure out how a head-on collision, on a two-lane highway was completely avoidable when somebody swerves across the line in front of me. Like,
right.
I don't know what I could have done.
Prepare for that.
No, that's right. And so that's the biggest. That's probably the worst. Those are the worst days that that you have.
Right.
And the crappy part about it is if I stay CEO long enough, it won't be the last one. Yeah. I mean, because hopefully it'll be the last one that had any tie back to the way those were. But you still got that chance of that car swerving or whatever. I mean, that's one. I think we didn't talk about this earlier, but I think that's one thing that a whole lot of people in management and in the industry forget is probably the most dangerous thing we do is when we shut the door of that truck.
Driving.
I mean, because the industry drives a lot of miles a day. I mean, it's what you got to do
all the time.
And with all the distracted drivers that are out there and stuff nowadays, that's a whole nother piece.
From beginning to end,
mm-hmm.
At home, at work, whatever, best decision you ever made?
Hopefully my wife won't watch this. She will, because I'm going to embarrass her a little bit. Best decision I ever made, just in general, and I know the question's more about the industry, but best decision I ever made was calling a phone number that was left on a napkin for me at a restaurant I was working part-time at, and that was my wife's phone number. Still got the same phone number today, so I can't say it out loud. But the best decision I ever made, Tom. I mean, it was just kind of one of those things that fate had it lined up for us, and I guess we're pushing 23 years after the fact now. I mean, obviously it wouldn't just make a phone call and everything was roses,
sure.
right? Like there's a lot of life that gets lived in 23 years. But as I noted earlier, having somebody in your corner, and to some of the guys that'll listen to this, it's not. It doesn't have to be a wife, but you got to have somebody in your corner.
Somebody,
whether that's a brother, whether that's your pastor, whether that's a I mean, another thing I think we are real jaded on in this industry because it's such a tough guy, tough. I mean, you got to be tough.
Yep.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's hard to go out there in the middle of the cold and rain and everything else and work a switch 40 foot in the air with the wind blowing south. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart.
Nope.
But emotions are real in all of us, male, female, 19, 45, like those are all struggle, anxiety, like all the things, and so you got to work through those things.
Yep.
And you got to own them. You got to give them a name. I was able to do it with fear of heights, is channeling that into actually, efficiency and climbing poles. Like you got to, if you can't do that on your own, you got to reach out to somebody and have a conversation. And if you're really having dark days, get deep with that. Don't try to stick it on a shelf.
Don't hide it.
Or get it in the bottom of a bottle, because those aren't the right ways.
That's
and so
exactly
that was
right.
the best decision I've ever made. I've been very blessed my whole life. My mom and dad were very supportive. But just to have that one person in my corner from day in and day out has been,
I think a lot of people in this industry don't put enough thought into that process,
Mm-hmm.
right? This industry's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard from a lineman's perspective, from an executive perspective. There's a lot that goes on. It's hard. It will wear you down. If you choose the wrong partner to help you with that, it makes things even harder, right?
That's right.
Battles at work and battles at home
Yep.
end up being a bad situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of guys, they don't think about that enough. And, I see these guys all the time. You'll be out on a storm or something, and their wife will be calling 15 times while they're up in the air trying to do something.
Yeah.
And their head's not in it. When that's happening, their head's not in it.
That's
and that's a recipe for disaster,
It
right?
is, absolutely.
So, all right. So I've got a few more here before I let you get on about your day, because I know you're busy, right? If you had every cooperative CEO in America in one room later on today, and you could talk to them for 5 minutes, what's the one thing you would tell them, the most important thing that you would tell them?
Yeah, the absolute, and no matter, even if it wasn't co-op, I still believe this matters anyway. And I said it earlier, is don't forget who we work for. That's the very, because, you get deep in these strategic plans, and you get into all this, like you have so much knowledge about the industry, and like you're like trying to make all these decisions. But if you're not communicating that back to the people we work for, especially in the co-op model, you're not going to last very long. Because we're locally governed. I've had a couple friends not make it because of the great CEOs and could have been great, but they lost touch with either directly with their board or their consumer base, and then in some instances they lose touch with their employees, right? Like they may have a good connection to the membership base and all that and listening, but they didn't help communicate that back to the employees, and there was this huge misalignment. So relationships matter, and it's, and it's not a threat. Don't forget who you work for kind of thing. They know everything. No, that's not what I'm saying. It's, you got to have a relationship with them, and if you serve, 9,000 members, or if you serve 90,000 or 900,000 subscribers or customers, in some of these investor owns, if you forget what is actually going on out there, and you don't have people that are locally attached to that situation, it's not going to end well.
Right.
And then, you see it a lot in really large organizations, to where they get out, they probably are doing a good job with staying in because of technology and things today. They're able to, surveys and stuff like that. And so they got a pretty good clue of what's going on with the consumer base, but then they completely lose touch with the middle ground, and they promote people into positions that maybe the position didn't even need to exist, because, we're this, certain size organization, so we need VPs, and we need
to have titles.
We got to have titles, and so that, it's just, I don't know. I almost want to get on a soapbox sometimes and just talk about you have to communicate with one another, and you gotta hear them.
Yeah.
So I probably didn't say that yet. It's pretty easy to get real smart.
Yeah.
And to know everything when you get those titles, right? And then so it's always somebody will ask a question, or they're giving a spiel on something, and you're not listening. You picked up on, you might have, if they sent you an email before the meeting, right? You got the title of the email, and so you think you know what they're coming to talk about, and you've already formulated your own opinion before they walk through the door. And so they sit there for 15 minutes and you hadn't heard a word they said. That is, and it's real easy in the CEO's position for that to happen, and it's not intentional. It's because there may be 3, 5, 10, 15 more meetings coming before or after that. And so it's hard to process all that. And so give yourself some grace also, that you can't answer every, and we're talking to CEOs, right? You can't take every email. You can't take every phone call.
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
No.
You know, even if you pride yourself on, no, I know everything that's going on. I was that way in 2020.
Right.
Like, no, I know this organization inside and out, and I'm going to love on my people and everything else. I'm going to be the one that answers the phone call every time it rings, kind of thing. And then it didn't take me long to go, whoa, I don't have any bandwidth.
No.
Like,
there's only so much of you.
That's it, you know. And I want to go back just a little bit, because I just had a thought that I didn't cover earlier when we were talking about the young guys. And this applies to both. This applies to the CEOs, and that, to your question, and this applies to the guy that first showed up on the job the first day. And sometimes it's not the most popular opinion, but I strongly believe that you have to take care of you before you can take care of anybody else.
1,000%.
You have to take care of you if you're a believer, if in whatever you believe in. You've got to be mentally right and taking care of you to be a warrior for Christ. You got to be right and taking care of you to be a warrior for your employees. And that's why I talk about the fact, if you're struggling with being your best self that you think you can be and that you know you can be, then get some help, because there's people out there that can help you.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what title you have or anything. It doesn't matter if you're a janitor or literally the homeless guy walking down the street. Like, you got to take care of you first and start. And I'm not talking about being selfish or arrogant or any of that kind of stuff. But you've got to take care of you, because you can't take care of anybody else if you're not taking care of yourself.
That's exactly right.
You know?
Yeah.
You know,
if your house is messy, you can't go clean someone else's.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
All right. So the last one I've got for you, 20 years from now, someone's sitting where you're sitting today. What do you hope they say about you and what you did for your organization?
Yeah. I hope they got the courage, first of all, to use the word love. That, you know, that he truly loved the organization. He truly loved the consumer base. He truly loved what he did. And because I think that is something that this world is lost. You know, there's way more hate than there is love out there. And so that's a word that, if it's a eulogy or whatever the case is 20 years from now, if it's only said once, I'll be happy. But I think we really do have to have, you know, love inside our organizations. And then, but going deeper is that he showed up every day. He made the best decision with the information he had. You know, there wasn't no indecision. It was a decision made, because I think we can get way, especially, and it's going to get worse with AI and all these other things, because it's real easy to do a whole bunch of research, and you could sit there and just research yourself to death
forever. Yeah.
And that's not helping us. We got to make some decisions, and so that'd really be the biggest piece of it. And then I stayed humble. I mean, that's, you know, it's real easy, Tom. You get a title, whether it's CEO or you know, VP, or even, heck, general foreman. Like, if we go back to just, you know, kind of out in the field type stuff, it's real easy for a guy to get the foreman title and think he's almighty now.
Next thing you know, he doesn't get out of the truck no more.
He doesn't get out of the truck.
Yeah.
He's not loving on those guys. He's not paying attention to those near-miss reports. And then guys stop doing near-miss reports, because I turned 3 of them in and we haven't done anything about it, because, you know, this situation, this is my way to report it, and I follow the process, but because you're just in the truck, you know, and not doing anything with it, nothing's happening. So what do? We stop doing them. I mean, we're not going to do anything. I mean, nobody's going to just do extra work for the fun of it. I mean, it's not the way we're wired.
Not a chance.
You know, so being there, being present, and actually engaged, listening, those type things. Those are the kind of words that I hope, you know, and I dream that somebody will share 20 years from now, is that we did that, and just embrace the challenges, man. They're going to be there, and change it, instead of using the word challenge, to opportunities.
That's it. Don't shy away from them.
Yeah.
Take them on head on.
That's right. That's right.
Heck yeah.
I guess I'm going to keep this thing going too long. We're going to wrap it up. But the other one I missed on the pet peeves is we have, you hear it everywhere, but workforce development, workforce this, this generation, that, they don't do the, like all this negativity. And especially kind of keeping it tied to the CEO talk. This is one of those things that I truly believe that if you're having a workforce development problem, that's not the workforce's problem. That's your problem.
Yeah.
Because you're not
not developing them.
You're not developing
Yeah.
them. And so how does a high schooler know, or junior high or whatever, know anything about this industry if you're not going and talking about it? It's not in textbooks.
No.
It never will be.
No.
I mean, it's just not. I mean, so you've got to show up and show them and give them an opportunity to understand that there is an opportunity out there. And then once they show up and they come to work for you, it's not over. You got to keep going. Yes, the generations are different. I was at a conference probably 3 or 4 years ago, and this lady did a thing about this, and this one, it really, really resonated with me. Like, no, I got to take ownership of this. She posted these slides and didn't put any dates or anything to them, and used a little AI thing to kind of manipulate them a little bit. But it was like, well, what do you think this generation is, and what do you think this generation is, and like all this kind of stuff, and would stop until somebody answered. And it was all the answers that I can't keep up with,
right?
Because
right.
I'm like, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
But everyone that answered in that room was all talking about the new generations, like all the millennials or whatever the case is. They were like, oh, that's definitely millennials.
Oh, it's them.
It's them.
Yeah.
Well, and then same slides without the edits to it to make them look a little younger or whatever, like new age photos. The same, you could tell they're the same photos. I mean, this was 1950, 1960, 1970, and 1980. And she went in and showed history of where, in 1960, the 1950-year-old, that generation there, they were talking about the ones coming out of the 60s, the exact same way we're talking about the folks that are coming out of the 2020s and on. And so this isn't new.
No, it's always been these kids,
all these kids, and so it is one of those things. Now they do have there is a whole new world out there that I believe. I think the easiest way to talk about it would be take a 20-year hand. All right, he's been in the industry for 20 years, 20 plus years, and his mentality, it's you and I, right, and the guys that are a little older than us, that we remember the days of going out and setting 8 poles a day with a digger truck and a man lift and maybe a pickup.
Yep.
We remember that. I mean, if OSHA would showed up on some of those jobs, they would literally have just fell over, croaked,
100%.
like just went into convulsions, right? And nobody got hurt. I mean, it was not, we did everything we could to the best of our ability back then with the tools we had, and we got the work done.
Yep.
But we have this mentality that a guy that we hire today ought to understand that. Yeah. And he never will. No. Because that world doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. So
it's so foreign to him.
It is, and there's almost not a part. There's almost not even a reason to talk about it anymore, other than I think history does help everybody.
Sure.
But what if we got that 25, the guys, you and I, and the ones above us, to actually stop and talk to the guy that walked in and understand social media, understand that they literally can Google anything and figure it out.
They can make their phone do so much stuff.
That's right. And so we get to talking about how do we fit this new generation into our old industry. I think it's time to say, hey, let's take the old industry and make it match the new generation.
Right.
As best we can. It's got to, dude. There's no way to go back to setting poles by hand.
Our industry has been stuck in their this is how we do it, this is how we've been doing it, this is how we're always going to do it mentality for way too long.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's just I've had guys that literally they still work there. And I was right there with them, like, oh my gosh, was getting aggravated at new guys for using their GPS to put the job site information in.
Yeah.
And they're like, how? You're never going to know how to get there. Well, they're never going to have to not know how to get there.
That's exactly right.
That's, it's, that's the difference. They're like, well, what if your phone goes out? They're not. I mean, the reality is, and so I don't, just a little twist on the industry. Yeah. I think we got to focus on it though.
No,
it's
I like
not,
it.
It's not just go back to the old days.
I think more people need to think like that for sure.
Yeah.
Colby, man, I appreciate you, dude.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
Tom, I love what you're doing with this podcast, man. The
Thanks.
industry needs it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
good
It's
work.
people like you that make it happen, though. You know what I mean?
Sweet.
If no one want to share and talk, then
Yeah.
I would just be sitting here on a microphone talking to myself, and nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's
right.
good stuff.
Appreciate you,
Yeah,
my man.
Absolutely, Tom. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of Power Grid Talks, from the bucket trucks to the boardrooms. I'm your host, Tom Williamson. I want to thank you for joining me as we talk to the people behind the scenes who keep our grid strong. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to hit that subscribe button, give it a share, and leave a review so we can keep bringing more voices from across the utility world to the conversation table. You can also find us at PowerGridTalks.com. Until next time, stay safe and keep the power flowing.